Officer Marcus Cole froze in his own kitchen doorway. His 5-year-old daughter Luna was on her knees, trembling so violently her tiny body blurred. Above her stood Victoria, his wife, holding a kettle of boiling water, steam rising like a death sentence. Luna's mouth opened in a silent scream, no sound escaping her traumatized throat. Her eyes rolled back in pure terror. Marcus was too far, too slow. But Shadow, his Belgian Malinois, was already airborne, 90 pounds of fury launching at Victoria's arm. The kettle flew. Boiling water exploded, and a little girl's nightmare finally shattered into the light. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. And if you believe that a father's love and a dog's courage can save a life when all hope seems lost, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is proof that the real heroes are the ones who never leave your side. The morning light over Charleston, South Carolina, was deceptively gentle. It filtered through the palmetto trees lining Broad Street, casting long shadows across the cobblestones that tourists loved to photograph. The thermometer on the porch of the Cole residence read a pleasant 67 degrees, the kind of mild, golden warmth that promised a perfect day. But inside the house the air felt different, heavier, charged with something that had nothing to do with the weather. Marcus Cole stood in the center of his kitchen, holding a small black cube in his hand. A cheap pet camera he'd picked up online for $39. It felt like a toy compared to the high-tech surveillance gear he used on the force, but he didn't need anything sophisticated. He just needed answers. "All right, buddy," Marcus whispered, glancing down at the Belgian Malinois lying by his feet. "Let's see why you're not eating." Shadow was a magnificent creature, 92 pounds of muscle and loyalty. His coat, a rich fawn color that seemed to glow in certain light. He had the intelligent amber eyes of a dog that had solved puzzles and saved lives. But lately those eyes looked weary, hollow. Shadow hadn't touched his kibble in 3 days. The vet had found nothing physically wrong. Stress. Dr. Patterson had suggested scratching his beard. Dogs are sensitive. Something in the home environment might be bothering him. But what could stress a dog that had faced down armed felons without flinching? A dog that had taken a knife wound to the shoulder, protecting Marcus during a drug bust 2 years ago. Marcus reached up and tucked the small camera on top of the refrigerator, pushing it back behind a decorative ceramic vase. It was a dusty corner, hidden in shadows. He checked the app on his phone. The feed was grainy, but it covered the feeding bowls and the back door. The little green light blinked once, then settled into a steady, almost invisible pulse. He checked his watch. Running late again. He hadn't told his wife Victoria about the camera. It wasn't that he was hiding it from her maliciously. He just felt foolish. She would probably laugh in that musical way of hers and tell him he was obsessed with the dog. Maybe she was right. Shadow was more than a dog. After Marcus's first wife, Emily, died in that car accident 3 years ago, Shadow had been the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. The only reason he got out of bed some mornings. The only heartbeat in the house besides his own. Until he met Victoria. And until Luna stopped speaking. "Marcus, honey, are you still here?" The voice floated down the hallway, sweet as honey. Victoria walked into the kitchen, bringing the scent of expensive jasmine perfume with her. She was 34 years old and flawlessly put together even at this early hour. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves around a face that belonged on magazine covers, high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes the color of sea glass. She was the picture of the devoted wife and stepmother, the woman who had stepped in to heal a broken family. Just leaving, Marcus said, sliding his phone into his pocket. He grabbed his utility belt from the counter. Checking on Shadow. You worry too much, Victoria said, walking over to straighten his collar. Her touch was light, possessive. He's just being a picky eater. Animals get moody just like people. Shadow, who had been resting his chin on his paws, suddenly stood up. A low, vibrating sound began in his chest. It wasn't a bark. It wasn't a whine. It was a growl, deep resonant, a warning that rumbled through the kitchen like distant thunder. His hackles, the fur along his spine, stood up in a rigid line. He wasn't looking at Marcus. He was staring fixedly at Victoria. Marcus frowned. Shadow heel. The dog didn't move. His body was coiled tense, a spring ready to release. I don't know what's gotten into him. Victoria sighed, taking a small step back. Her hand fluttered to her chest in a gesture of nervous concern. He's been so aggressive lately, especially when you're not looking. It scares Luna. At the mention of his daughter, Marcus turned. Luna was standing in the doorway of the pantry clutching a small stuffed rabbit, the one Emily had given her before the accident. She was 5 years old, but looked younger, her frame frail and thin inside her oversized pajamas. She had Marcus's dark curly hair, but Emily's large, soulful brown eyes. Eyes that currently looked hollow, devoid of the spark a child should have. Since Victoria had moved in 14 months ago, Luna had stopped speaking. The doctors called it selective mutism, a response to trauma, they said. The loss of her mother, the adjustment to a new family dynamic. Children process grief differently, Dr. Simmons had explained. Some withdraw, some act out. Luna had chosen silence. Marcus blamed himself every single day. Hey, princess, Marcus said, softening his voice. He knelt down, ignoring the stiffness in his knees from too many years chasing suspects. Be good for Mommy today, okay? Luna didn't answer. She didn't even nod. She just looked at her father, her knuckles white where she gripped the stuffed rabbit. Her gaze darted to Shadow, then to Victoria, then back to the floor. It was a look of profound pleading. But Marcus, in his rush and his desperate desire to believe everything was fine, misread it as simple shyness. Shadow growled again, louder this time. He stepped between Luna and Victoria, positioning his body as a barrier. Shadow, enough! Marcus snapped his voice, sharp with command. The dog flinched. His ears flattened against his skull. The hurt in the animal's eyes was almost human. But he lowered his head, obeying the master he loved. I'm sorry, Marcus said to Victoria, standing up and running a hand through his hair. He's jealous, that's all. He's used to being the only one. I'll take him for a long run when I get back tonight. Tire him out. It's okay, Victoria cooed, forcing a brave smile. She leaned in and kissed Marcus on the cheek. We'll be fine. Just go save the world, Officer Cole. Marcus looked at his family one last time. The beautiful wife. The quiet daughter. The loyal dog. It was the picture of the life he had fought to rebuild after Emily's death. He felt a pang of guilt for yelling at Shadow, a dog who had taken a blade for him, who had been his only friend through the darkest nights. He gave the dog a quick, apologetic pat on the head. Be a good boy, Shadow. Guard the house. With a heavy sigh, Marcus grabbed his keys and walked out the back door. The warm Charleston air hit him immediately, carrying the sounds of the waking city, distant traffic church bells, the cry of seagulls near the harbor. He walked to his patrol car, the guilt of scolding Shadow still nagging at him. I'll bring him a steak tonight, he promised himself. Just a little treat to make up for it. As he backed the car out of the driveway, the sun glinting off the hood, Marcus had no idea that he had just left his daughter in a cage, and locked the door. Inside the house, the sound of the cruiser's engine faded away. The heavy deadbolt on the back door clicked into place. The silence that followed was instant. Absolute. The warmth that Victoria had projected while Marcus was in the room evaporated like morning dew under a scorching sun. It was replaced by something cold sharp, a tension that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the air. Victoria stood by the window watching until the patrol car turned the corner and vanished from sight. Her posture changed. It wasn't the relaxation of relief. It was the settling of a predator that no longer needed to hide in the tall grass. The soft, loving smile dropped from her face like a mask hitting the floor. What was revealed underneath was something hard, ugly, ancient in its cruelty. She turned slowly on her heel. Her eyes, moments ago filled with warmth and concern, were now flat and cold. Reptilian. The eyes of something that had learned to mimic human emotion without ever truly feeling it. She looked at Shadow. The dog had backed into the corner near the pantry, positioning himself in front of Luna. He didn't growl this time. He knew the protector was gone. He just watched her, his body trembling with a suppressed urge to attack that he knew he couldn't act on. Not without Marcus's command. Not without permission. "Stupid mutt," Victoria hissed. Her voice was unrecognizable, low, venomous, dripping with contempt. "One of these days I'm going to have you put down myself. Tell Marcus you bit the mailman. Or maybe you just got sick. Dogs die all the time." She stepped toward Luna. The little girl flinched so violently she nearly dropped her stuffed rabbit. She pressed her back against the pantry door, trying to make herself as small as possible, trying to disappear into the wood grain. "And you," Victoria's voice rose to a sharp, serrated whisper. She crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, her heels clicking against the tile like the ticking of a bomb. "What are you staring at? Do you think he's coming back? Do you think crying with those big, pathetic eyes is going to save you?" Luna shook her head rapidly, terror choking her. She opened her mouth as if to scream, but no sound came out. The silence had stolen her voice long ago. "Daddy isn't coming home for lunch," Victoria mocked, looming over the child. Her shadow fell across Luna like a shroud. "Daddy has to work. Daddy has to protect strangers. Daddy doesn't care about you." She reached out with her manicured fingers, nails painted a perfect crimson, and snatched the stuffed rabbit from Luna's hands. "Look at this filthy thing. You still sleep with this? You're 5 years old, not a baby." Luna's eyes went wide with panic. She reached for the rabbit, her mother's last gift. But Victoria held it high above her head. "Please," Luna mouthed, no sound emerging. "Please." Victoria smiled. It was the cruelest thing Luna had ever seen. "You want it back? Then you're going to earn it." She tossed the rabbit onto the top of the refrigerator far beyond Luna's reach. "We're going to have a very productive day, you and I. And since you like to hide behind that dog..." Victoria's eyes flicked to Shadow, who was growling low in his chest. "Let's see how brave you are when you're earning your keep." She grabbed Luna by the upper arm. Her grip was iron, her fingers digging into the soft flesh hard enough to leave bruises through the pajama sleeve. Luna gasped a silent puff of air. Tears instantly welled in her eyes. Victoria dragged her toward the far corner of the kitchen, near the utility closet. It was a spot shielded by the high cabinetry. A blind spot, not visible from the hallway or the living room windows. The perfect place to dispense discipline without witnesses. She shoved Luna down. The little girl hit the floor hard, her knees cracking against the cold tile. She curled into a fetal position, instantly covering her head with her arms, waiting for the blow she knew was coming. Shadow barked a sharp, desperate sound and took a step forward. But Victoria spun around, grabbing a heavy wooden cutting board from the counter and brandishing it at the dog. "Back!" she screamed, her face twisted with rage. "Get back or I'll crack your skull open and tell Marcus you ran into the street. You think anyone would question it? You think anyone would care?" Shadow froze. The dog was torn, agonizingly caught between his training, his instinct, and the very real threat. His protective programming said attack. His obedience programming said wait for command. And the threat to his own life said survive. He whined a high-pitched sound of pure helplessness. Victoria turned back to Luna, satisfied with her dominance. She didn't notice the refrigerator. She didn't notice the dusty top shelf. And she certainly didn't notice the small black cube sitting behind the ceramic vase, its tiny lens pointed directly at the corner where Luna now cowered. The LED light blinked once. Twice. It was recording everything. The utility closet smelled of bleach and ammonia, a sharp chemical sting that burned the inside of Luna's nose. It was supposed to be a cleaning supply closet. Small. Dark. The light bulb had burned out weeks ago, and Victoria had never bothered to replace it. Now, it served a different purpose. Luna sat on the cold concrete floor, her back against the wall, her knees pulled up to her chest. The door was closed, but not locked, Victoria's way of testing her. If Luna tried to leave before she was told the punishment would be worse. So Luna stayed. She didn't know how long she'd been in here. Time moved differently in the dark. Minutes stretched into hours. Hours collapsed into moments. The only way she could track the passage of time was by the thin strip of light under the door, bright when the sun was high, dimming when clouds passed orange, when evening approached. Right now, it was still bright. Still morning. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten breakfast. Victoria had taken the cereal away before Luna could finish dumping the bowl into the trash, because Luna had been eating too slowly. That was yesterday, or was it the day before Luna couldn't remember anymore? She pressed her forehead against her knees and thought about Mommy. Mommy used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. Chocolate chip pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse with whipped cream ears and a strawberry nose. Mommy used to sing while she cooked old songs that Luna didn't know the words to, but loved anyway because of how happy Mommy looked when she sang them. Mommy used to hold Luna when she was scared. "There's nothing in the dark that isn't there in the light," Mommy would whisper. "The dark just hides things, but they're the same things. They can't hurt you." Luna wondered if Mommy would say that now, if Mommy could see what lived in this house. A sound outside the door made Luna freeze. Footsteps, the clicking of heels against tile. Getting closer. The door swung open, flooding the closet with blinding light. Luna squinted, throwing up her arm to shield her eyes. Victoria stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the brightness like some kind of terrible angel. "Get up!" Luna scrambled to her feet, her legs stiff and aching from sitting so long. "Come." She followed Victoria into the kitchen. The room looked different now. The cleaning supplies had been taken out and arranged on the counter bleach ammonia scrub brushes, a bucket filled with soapy water. On the floor near the island, a toothbrush lay waiting. Luna's stomach dropped. "You're going to make yourself useful," Victoria said, walking to the kitchen island and perching on a high stool. She picked up her phone in one hand and a glass of white wine in the other. "These grout lines are filthy, disgusting. It reflects poorly on me when we have guests." She gestured at the floor with her wine glass. "I want them white, spotless. You'll use the toothbrush, and you'll keep working until I tell you to stop." Luna looked at the floor. The grout lines stretched in an endless grid across the entire kitchen, hundreds of them, each one 8 inches long, running between the marble tiles. It would take hours. It would take forever. "What are you waiting for?" Victoria's voice sharpened. "Get on your knees." Luna knelt. She picked up the toothbrush. She began to scrub. The motion was repetitive, mind-numbing. Back and forth, pressing the frayed bristles into the narrow groove between tiles, watching the gray residue slowly lift and turn the water in the bucket brown. Luna's world narrowed down to the grout line in front of her. Then the next one. Then the next. Her knees began to ache almost immediately, the thin flesh pressing against cold, unforgiving stone. After 30 minutes, the ache turned to burning. After an hour, the burning turned to numbness. Her knuckles fared worse. Every time her hand slipped, which happened more and more as exhaustion set in, the rough stone scraped away another layer of skin. Tiny beads of blood welled up on her right hand, mixing with the soapy water to create pink streaks on the tile. She didn't stop to wipe them. Stopping meant attention. Attention was dangerous. Above her, Victoria lounged on the stool, scrolling through her phone with one hand, while sipping wine with the other. She wasn't watching Luna, not directly, but Luna could feel her awareness like the heat of a spotlight, always present, always waiting for a mistake. "Hello? Yes, this is Victoria Cole." Luna kept scrubbing. "I'm calling about the family protection policy we discussed last month. My husband, yes, Officer Cole, he wanted me to verify some details about the coverage." Luna's arms burned, her shoulders screamed, but she kept scrubbing. "The accidental death rider that's included, correct? What about incidents in the home, falls, burns, that sort of thing?" "Falls, burns." Luna scrubbed harder. "And the payout timeline, 30 days from the coroner's report. That's standard, coroner." Luna had heard that word before, on the TV shows Daddy watched late at night. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but she knew it had something to do with dead people. $500,000. Yes, that's what I thought. Thank you so much. You've been very helpful." Victoria hung up. She took a long sip of wine, staring at her phone screen with a small, satisfied smile. Then her eyes drifted down to Luna. "You missed a spot." Luna looked at the grout line she'd just finished. It looked clean to her, as clean as she could make it. "Right there." Victoria pointed with her toe. "Do it again." Luna positioned the toothbrush and scrubbed. "Again." She scrubbed harder. "Again." Her vision blurred with tears she didn't dare let fall. "Pathetic," Victoria muttered, returning to her phone. "Absolutely pathetic. Just like your father." Luna bit her lip until she tasted blood. She kept scrubbing. Shadow watched from his corner near the back door. He hadn't moved from that spot since Victoria had threatened him with the cutting board. His training told him to stay, to wait for his handler, to avoid confrontation unless commanded otherwise. But every instinct in his body screamed at him to move. He could smell Luna's fear, a sharp, acrid scent that cut through the chemical smell of the cleaning products. He could smell her pain, the copper tang of blood from her scraped knuckles. He could hear her heart racing, her breathing shallow and quick. And he could smell Victoria. That was the smell that bothered him most. It wasn't a normal human smell. It was something else, something cold and calculating underneath the expensive perfume. Something that reminded Shadow of the bad men Marcus had trained him to find. The ones who hurt people without remorse. The ones whose scent was flat empty, devoid of the warm emotional undertones that normal humans carried. Victoria smelled like a predator. And Luna was prey. Shadow whined softly. Luna glanced up at him just for a second. Her eyes met his. In that brief moment, something passed between them, a silent communication older than language. "I'm here," his eyes said. "I won't leave you." "I know," her eyes answered. "I know." Then she looked back down at the grout line and kept scrubbing. Shadow laid his head on his paws, his amber eyes never leaving Victoria. Watching. Waiting. The hours crawled by. The strip of light under the closet door shifted from bright white to mellow gold as the sun moved across the sky. Luna had made it halfway across the kitchen floor, her knees now raw and red, her hands shaking with exhaustion, her stomach cramping with hunger. Victoria had finished 2 glasses of wine and was starting on a third. Her phone rang. "Yes. Oh, hello, Mrs. Patterson. Yes, everything is fine. Luna, she's wonderful. We're having a lovely day together. Arts and crafts." Luna kept her head down, focusing on the grout line in front of her. "The parent-teacher conference. Of course I'll be there. Thursday at 3? Perfect. Yes, I'll tell Marcus. Thank you for calling." She hung up. "Your teacher," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Such a nice woman. So concerned about you. Wants to make sure you're adjusting well to the new family dynamic." Victoria laughed, a cold, brittle sound. If only she knew. Luna didn't respond. She couldn't respond, even if she wanted to. The words were locked inside her, trapped behind a wall of fear so thick and so tall that she couldn't remember what it felt like to speak. She remembered that she used to talk, used to chatter endlessly about everything and nothing, filling the silences with questions and observations, and made up stories about her stuffed animals. But that was before Mommy died. Before Victoria came. Before the monster moved into her house and wore a pretty face. Now the words stayed inside, piling up like leaves in autumn, rotting in the silence. "You know," Victoria said, swirling her wine, "you could make this so much easier on yourself." Luna paused in her scrubbing. "All you have to do is talk. Just say something, anything. Tell your father that you're happy. Tell your teacher that you love your new mommy. It's not hard." Luna stared at the floor. "But you won't, will you? You're stubborn. Like your mother." When at the mention of her mother, something flickered in Luna's chest, a tiny spark of heat in the cold. "Emily was stubborn too. Did you know that your father told me about her? How she always had to have things her way. How she never listened. How she—" Victoria stopped. She leaned forward on the stool, her eyes narrowing. "Are you crying?" Luna wasn't crying, but her hands had stopped moving. She was staring at the bucket of dirty water, her reflection distorted on its surface. She was thinking about her mother. About chocolate chip pancakes and lullabies and the feeling of being safe. She was thinking that she would never feel safe again. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." The command cracked through the kitchen like a whip. Luna's head snapped up. Victoria was standing now, her wine glass set aside, her posture tense and aggressive. "You think you can ignore me? You think you can sit there and feel sorry for yourself while I'm speaking to you?" Luna shook her head frantically. No, she hadn't meant to ignore. She hadn't meant to get up. Luna scrambled to her feet. "Come here." She took one step forward, then another. Shadow was on his feet now, a low growl building in his chest. Victoria grabbed Luna's chin, forcing her head back, examining her face with cold, clinical interest. "You're pathetic," she whispered. "Worthless. Do you know that you're nothing but a burden, a leftover from a dead woman? Your father keeps you around out of guilt, not love. If I weren't here, he would have shipped you off to your grandparents months ago." The words hit Luna like physical blows. Pathetic. Worthless. Burden. She had heard them before, whispered in the dark of her bedroom when Daddy was working late. Hissed into her ear during bath time. Repeated so often that she had started to believe them. Maybe she was worthless. Maybe Daddy didn't really love her. Maybe everything Victoria said was true. Now, Victoria released Luna's chin with a shove. Get back to work. You have 3 more hours before your father comes home. I want this floor spotless. Luna returned to her knees. She picked up the toothbrush. She began to scrub. But something was different now. As she worked, her free hand, the one not holding the brush, crept across the floor toward the shadows under the kitchen island. Her fingers found something small and hard. A broken piece of crayon. Black. Luna palmed it, hiding it in her fist. She didn't know why. She didn't know what she would do with it. But it was hers. A tiny secret. A small rebellion. And in the prison that her home had become, that was enough. The sound of the garage door opening at 5:47 p.m. triggered a transformation so rapid, so complete, that anyone watching would have doubted their own eyes. One moment Victoria was standing over Luna, her face twisted with irritation, criticizing the girl's work with venomous precision. The next moment, before the rumble of the door had even faded, she was someone else entirely. The harsh lines around her mouth softened. Her rigid posture relaxed into something warm and welcoming. The coldness in her eyes melted away, replaced by an expression of gentle concern. Quick, she said, her voice suddenly light and musical. Put away the cleaning supplies. Go wash your hands. And remember. She leaned down, her face inches from Luna's. We had a wonderful day. Arts and crafts, cookies, television. Do you understand? Luna nodded mechanically. Good girl. Victoria straightened, smoothing her hair, adjusting her blouse. By the time Marcus walked through the door, she was standing at the kitchen counter, stirring a pot of pasta sauce with a wooden spoon and humming softly to herself. The picture of domestic bliss. Hey, beautiful, Marcus said, crossing the kitchen to kiss her cheek. Something smells amazing. Grandma's recipe. Victoria smiled, tilting her head to accept the kiss. Luna helped me make it, didn't you, sweetheart? Luna had emerged from the bathroom, her hands scrubbed pink, her face carefully blank. She stood in the doorway, watching her father with those huge, hollow eyes. Marcus knelt down, opening his arms. Hey, princess, how was your day? Luna walked into his embrace stiffly like a wind-up toy following its programming. She was wonderful, Victoria answered for her. We made cookies, chocolate chip, her favorite. Luna said nothing. Marcus held her at arm's length, studying her face. Something flickered in his expression, a shadow of doubt quickly suppressed. You okay, sweetheart? You look tired. Growing pains, Victoria said smoothly, returning to her stirring. She ran around all afternoon. I could barely keep up with her. You know how kids are. Marcus nodded slowly. He wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. Because the alternative, the thought that something was wrong, that his daughter was in pain, that he had failed to protect her, just as he had failed to protect Emily, was too terrible to contemplate. How's Shadow? He asked, straightening up and looking around. He eat today? A little, Victoria said. I think he's coming around. Maybe he was just adjusting to the new food. Marcus spotted the dog lying in his usual corner near the back door. Shadow's tail gave a single weak wag when their eyes met. Hey boy, you feeling better? Shadow didn't get up. He just watched. His amber eyes moved from Marcus to Victoria to Luna, then back to Victoria. Watching. Always watching. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, Victoria announced. Why don't you go change out of your uniform, Luna, sweetheart? Come help me set the table. Marcus headed toward the bedroom, already loosening his tie. Luna walked to the silverware drawer and began pulling out forks and knives. Victoria leaned close as she passed, her voice barely a whisper. Good girl. Keep being good, and tomorrow will be easier." Luna said nothing. She just kept pulling out silverware piece by piece, her face as blank as a doll's. And in her pocket, hidden in the folds of her pajamas, the black crayon waited. That night after dinner, after bath time, after Marcus had kissed her forehead and turned off the light, Luna lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet. She could hear the distant murmur of the television downstairs, Daddy and Victoria watching something together, their voices occasionally rising in laughter. She could hear the creak of Shadow settling into his spot in the hallway outside her door. He always slept there now. Victoria didn't like it, but Daddy had insisted. "He's protecting her," Daddy had said. "It's what he's trained to do." Luna was grateful for that. In the darkness, with Shadow's breathing just outside her door, she felt almost safe. Almost. She slipped her hand under her pillow and found the crayon. Then she reached further into the space between the mattress and the wall and pulled out a piece of paper she had hidden there days ago, a blank page torn from a coloring book. She couldn't speak. But maybe she could draw. Luna sat up in bed, pressing her back against the headboard. The moonlight through the window was just bright enough to see by. She smoothed the paper on her knee. She uncapped the crayon, and she began to draw. A house. Their house, with its pitched roof and big windows. A figure inside the house. Tall, with long hair. Arms raised. Another figure. Small, curled on the ground, and red, so much red, coming from the small figure's hands, from her knees, from her heart. Luna drew until her hand cramped. Then she looked at what she had created. It wasn't a pretty picture, but it was true. She folded the paper carefully, pressing the creases with her thumbnail. Then she slid it back into its hiding spot, between the mattress and the wall where the monster would never find it. Tomorrow she would draw another one, and another, and another. Until someone saw, until someone understood, until someone saved her. Outside the door, Shadow's ears twitched. He had heard the rustle of paper, the scratch of crayon on pulp. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew it was important. He pressed his nose against the crack under the door, inhaling deeply. He smelled Luna's fear, yes, but underneath it, something new. Something that smelled like determination, like hope. Shadow laid his head on his paws and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would watch. Tomorrow he would wait. And when the time came, when Marcus finally saw the truth, Shadow would be ready. The camera on the refrigerator blinked in the darkness. Still recording. Still waiting. The evidence was mounting. 3 weeks passed, and the drawings multiplied. Luna kept them hidden between her mattress and the wall, a growing collection of horrors rendered in black crayon on stolen paper. Each one told a piece of the story she couldn't speak. A tall figure with red hands. A small figure crouched in corners. Dark closets. Buckets of water. And always the tears streaming down the small figure's face like rivers of pain. She drew at night when the house was quiet, and Victoria's footsteps had finally retreated to the master bedroom. She drew by moonlight, pressing the crayon so hard against the paper that sometimes it broke in her fingers. She drew until her hand cramped, and her eyes burned. And then she hid the evidence, and waited. For what she didn't know. But something inside her, some stubborn spark that Victoria hadn't managed to extinguish, refused to let the truth stay buried forever. Shadow knew about the drawings. He couldn't see them, but he could smell them, the waxy scent of crayon, the salt of tears that had dried on paper. Every night, he lay outside Luna's door and listened to the scratch, scratch, scratch of her secret work. Every morning, he watched her emerge from her room with shadows under her eyes and resolution in her jaw. He understood in this way that dogs understand things humans think are beyond them. The pup was fighting back, the only way she could. Marcus, meanwhile, was drowning in denial. He checked the camera footage every night after Victoria went to sleep, scrolling through hours of grainy kitchen video with increasing desperation. He saw Victoria's sharp words, her impatient gestures, the way she sometimes grabbed Luna's arm too roughly. He saw Luna flinch. He saw Shadow growl. But he didn't see enough. Not enough to act. Not enough to shatter the illusion he had built so carefully around his second chance at happiness. She's strict, he told himself, watching Victoria snap at Luna for spilling juice. Some parents are strict. That doesn't make her a monster. She's stressed, he reasoned, watching Victoria shove Luna toward the stairs. Wedding planning is stressful. She'll calm down after things settle. She loves us, he whispered, watching Victoria smile sweetly as she handed Luna a sandwich, not seeing that the sandwich would be taken away the moment Marcus left for work. The lies we tell ourselves are always the most convincing, because we want so desperately to believe them. But the evidence kept mounting, and eventually even the most determined denial couldn't hold back the flood. It started with the bruises. Marcus noticed the first one on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after he'd installed the camera. Luna was reaching for her cereal bowl, and her sleeve rode up, exposing her forearm. Purple fingerprints wrapped around her wrist like a grotesque bracelet. Luna. Marcus's voice came out sharper than he intended. What happened to your arm? Luna froze her hand, suspended in midair. Victoria looked up from her coffee, her expression smooth and untroubled. Oh, that, she said, waving dismissively. She fell at the playground yesterday. You know how clumsy she is. Marcus frowned. That looks like a bruise from the monkey bars, Victoria interrupted. She was hanging upside down trying to show off. I told her to be careful, but you know how kids are. Luna nodded mechanically, her eyes fixed on the table. Marcus wanted to believe it. God, he wanted to believe it. But something in his gut twisted. A cold, serpentine doubt that had been growing for weeks finally raising its head. Luna, sweetheart. He knelt beside her chair, his voice gentle. Can you tell me what happened? Luna's eyes flickered to Victoria. Just for a second. Just long enough. She can't tell you anything. Victoria laughed, and there was an edge beneath the sweetness. She doesn't talk, remember. Besides, it's nothing. Kids get bruises all the time. She stood up, carrying her coffee cup to the sink. You'll be late for work. The dismissal was clear. Marcus hesitated, looking at his daughter, at the purple marks on her wrist, at the way she hunched her shoulders, at the fear swimming in her eyes. Then his radio crackled. Unit 47. We have a 1031 in progress at Harbor Street. All available units respond. Duty called. It always did. We'll talk about this tonight, Marcus said, kissing Luna's forehead. Okay, princess, we'll talk. Luna didn't respond. She just watched him leave the same way she always did, with those huge, hollow eyes that seemed to be screaming words her mouth couldn't form. And Victoria smiled. That night, Marcus pulled up the camera footage from the previous day. His hands were shaking. He scrolled to 2:47 p.m. The timestamp showed Luna and Victoria in the kitchen. Luna was washing dishes at the sink, standing on a small step stool to reach the faucet. Victoria was behind her, talking on her phone. Luna dropped a plate. It didn't break, just clattered against the stainless steel sink. But Victoria's reaction was instantaneous. She grabbed Luna's arm. Marcus watched his wife's fingers dig into his daughter's flesh, watched her yank the child around to face her, watched her mouth form words he couldn't hear because the camera had no audio. But he could read lips. Stupid. Clumsy. Worthless. And then Victoria released Luna's arm with a shove that sent the child stumbling backward off the step stool. Luna hit the floor. She didn't cry out, couldn't cry out, but her mouth opened in a silent "oh" of pain, and she curled into a ball, clutching her wrist. Victoria stepped over her and walked away. Marcus stopped the video. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He rewound. Watched again. Rewound. Watched again. It wasn't a playground accident. It wasn't clumsiness. It was assault. His wife had assaulted his daughter, and he had left Luna alone with her, day after day, week after week, believing the lies, ignoring the signs, choosing blindness over the terrible truth. "Oh God," Marcus whispered, pressing his palms against his eyes. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." In the bedroom, Victoria slept peacefully. In the hallway, Shadow lay outside Luna's door, his ears pricked, listening to the sounds of his master, finally beginning to see. The next morning, Marcus did something he had never done in 14 years on the force. He called in sick. "Food poisoning," he told his sergeant, keeping his voice weak and nauseated. "Must have been the seafood last night. I'll be out for at least a day, maybe 2. Victoria was surprised to see him at breakfast. "I thought you had the early shift." Called out. Marcus poured himself coffee, not meeting her eyes. "Didn't sleep well. Thought I'd take a personal day." "Oh." Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. "That's nice. We can spend the day together as a family. Actually, I was thinking you could use a break." Marcus forced a smile. "Why don't you go to the spa, that place you like downtown? My treat. Luna and I will have a daddy-daughter day." Victoria's eyes narrowed just slightly. "That's sweet, but I couldn't possibly. I insist." Marcus pulled out his wallet, handing her $300 in cash. "Get the full package. Massage, facial, whatever you want. You've been working so hard taking care of Luna. You deserve to be pampered." The money sat between them like a test. Victoria looked at it. Looked at Marcus. Looked at Luna, who was pushing scrambled eggs around her plate with a fork. "Well," she said finally, plucking the bills from his hand, "if you insist. But call me if you need anything. Luna can be a handful. We'll be fine." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Won't we, Princess?" Luna looked up at him. For the first time in months, something flickered in her expression. Hope. The moment Victoria's car pulled out of the driveway, Marcus knelt in front of his daughter. "Luna." His voice was soft, serious. "I need you to show me something. Can you do that?" Luna stared at him, uncertain. "I know something's wrong, sweetheart. I know you're scared. And I know—" His voice cracked. "I know I haven't been seeing what I should have seen. But I'm seeing now. I promise you I'm seeing now." Tears welled in Luna's eyes. "Can you show me? Can you show me what's been happening?" For a long moment, Luna didn't move. Then slowly she slipped off her chair. She took her father's hand, and she led him upstairs to her bedroom. The drawings were worse than Marcus had imagined. 23 of them spread across Luna's bed like evidence in a crime scene investigation. Because that's exactly what they were. Evidence. Crime scene documentation. A child's testimony rendered in black crayon because her voice had been stolen. Marcus looked at them one by one, his hands trembling. A tall figure hitting a small figure. A small figure locked in a dark space. A tall figure holding something over a small figure's head, something that dripped, that steamed. A small figure on hands and knees scrubbing, red marks on the small figure's arms, legs, face, and in every drawing in the corner, a dog. Watching, waiting, unable to help. "Luna." Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Is this Victoria?" Luna nodded. "Has she been hurting you?" Another nod. "For how long?" Luna held up all 10 fingers. Then she held them up again. Then again. Months. She had been suffering for months while Marcus worked, while Marcus slept, while Marcus ate dinner with the monster and kissed her goodnight and believed every sweet lie she told. He had failed his daughter. Completely. Utterly. The guilt hit him like a physical blow, a sucker punch to the stomach that doubled him over. He sat down heavily on Luna's bed, putting his head in his hands, fighting the urge to scream. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "Luna, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have known, but I didn't. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Small arms wrapped around his neck. Luna was hugging him. Despite everything, despite his failure, his blindness, his betrayal, his daughter was comforting him. Marcus held her tight, tears streaming down his face. "I'm going to fix this," he promised, his voice fierce with determination. "I'm going to make her pay for what she did to you. But I need more evidence, okay? I need to catch her on camera doing something that proves—" He stopped. The camera. He had 3 weeks of footage, hours and hours of video that he had only skimmed looking for obvious abuse. But what if the obvious abuse was hidden? What if it happened in the blind spots? What if Victoria knew about the camera? No. That was impossible. He had hidden it so carefully behind the vase in the shadows. There was no way she could have, unless she had seen him install it. Unless she had been more careful than usual because she suspected. Unless the monster was smarter than he had given her credit for. Marcus looked at his daughter. "Luna, sweetheart, does she ever act differently when she thinks someone might be watching?" Luna nodded vigorously. Of course she did. Predators always knew when to hide. "I need better evidence," Marcus said, thinking out loud. "Something she can't explain away. Something that shows exactly what she is." Luna tugged on his sleeve. She pointed at the drawing, specifically at the one showing a tall figure holding something steaming over a small figure's head. "What is that?" Marcus asked. "What is she holding?" Luna mimed pouring something. She touched her own cheek, then jerked her hand back, her face contorting in an expression of pain. Hot water. Victoria had threatened her with hot water. "Has she ever actually—" Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. Luna shook her head. Not yet. But the threat was there. The intent was there. And if Marcus didn't act soon, the threat would become reality. He gathered the drawings carefully, stacking them like the precious evidence they were. "I'm going to take these to work," he said. "I'm going to show them to someone who can help. And I'm going to make sure Victoria never hurts you again. Do you believe me?" Luna looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. One single, trusting nod. Marcus hugged her again, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the fragile bones of her shoulders beneath his hands. He had almost lost her. Not to death, but to something worse. To a slow, systematic destruction that would have left nothing but a hollow shell where his daughter used to be. But he had woken up in time. Barely. Just barely. "Shadow," Marcus called. The dog appeared in the doorway immediately, his ears alert, his eyes questioning. "Watch her," Marcus commanded. "Don't let her out of your sight. Don't let anyone near her. Do you understand?" Shadow moved to Luna's side and sat down, pressing his body against her leg. His message was clear. No one would touch this child while he still breathed. Marcus looked at his daughter, and his dog, the two most loyal souls he had ever known, and felt something shift in his chest. The denial was gone. The doubt was gone. What remained was cold, clear purpose. Victoria Hayes was going to prison, and he was going to put her there himself. The spa visit lasted 4 hours. Victoria returned at 3:15 p.m. glowing and relaxed, carrying shopping bags from boutiques she had stopped at along the way. She found Marcus in the living room, Luna asleep on the couch with Shadow curled at her feet. "Well, don't you three look cozy?" She laughed, setting down her bags. "Did you have a nice daddy-daughter day?" "We did." Marcus smiled, but his eyes were watchful. "She tired herself out playing in the backyard. I figured I'd let her nap before dinner." "Sweet." Victoria walked over and looked down at Luna's sleeping face. "She looks so peaceful when she sleeps, almost angelic." Her hand reached out as if to stroke Luna's hair. Shadow's head snapped up. A growl rumbled in his chest. Victoria pulled her hand back, her expression souring. "That dog needs training." "He's protective," Marcus said evenly. "It's his job." "Well, maybe he should learn the difference between protecting and threatening." Victoria turned and headed upstairs, her heels clicking against the hardwood. Marcus watched her go. 3 more days, he told himself. 3 more days of footage, 3 more days of documentation, 3 more days of building a case that no lawyer could tear apart. Then he would strike. But Victoria, it turned out, had plans of her own, and she wasn't going to wait 3 more days to execute them. The insurance call came the next morning. Marcus was in the kitchen pretending to read the newspaper while actually monitoring the camera feed on his phone. Victoria was upstairs supposedly getting dressed. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Mr. Cole, this is Patricia Hendricks from Southeastern Life Insurance. I'm calling to confirm the policy changes your wife requested." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Policy changes." "Yes, sir. Mrs. Cole called yesterday to increase the accidental death coverage on your daughter, Luna. She wanted to add a rider for in-home accidents specifically. Falls, burns, drowning, that sort of thing. The new payout would be $750,000. Marcus couldn't speak. "Mr. Cole, are you still there? What?" He cleared his throat. "What was the previous coverage, the standard family plan? $100,000 for accidental death of a minor dependent. But Mrs. Cole felt that wasn't adequate given, and I quote, how accident-prone children can be." "I see. I just need your verbal confirmation to process the change, since you're the primary policyholder. Do you authorize the increase?" Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "No," he said quietly. "I do not authorize any changes to the policy, and please flag the account. No modifications without my written notarized consent. Is that clear?" Silence on the other end. "Mr. Cole, is everything all right? Just do as I ask, Ms. Hendricks, please." He hung up. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. $750,000. That's how much his daughter's life was worth to Victoria. Not as a child, not as a human being, as an investment, a payout, a problem to be solved with an accident. He couldn't wait 3 more days. He couldn't wait 3 more hours. He pulled up his contacts and called his partner. "Detective Santos, please." "Santos." "Miguel, it's Marcus. I need a favor, a big one, and I need it now." 45 minutes later, Detective Miguel Santos was sitting in Marcus's patrol car 3 blocks from the Cole residence looking at Luna's drawings with an expression of barely contained fury. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, flipping through the pages. "Marcus, this is systematic. This is torture." "I know." "How long?" "At least 10 months, maybe longer." "And you didn't know?" The question wasn't accusatory. but it cut anyway. I didn't want to know, Marcus admitted, his voice hollow. Victoria was everything I thought I needed. After Emily died, I was drowning, and she threw me a lifeline. I grabbed it without asking what strings were attached. Miguel looked at his partner, his friend of 15 years, and saw a man on the verge of breaking. "What do you need from me?" "Witness," Marcus said. "When I confront her, I need a witness. And I need someone to take Luna somewhere safe before it happens. If Victoria realizes the game is up, I don't know what she'll do." "You think she'd hurt Luna to prevent her from testifying?" Marcus thought about the insurance call, about the drawings of steaming water held over a small figure's head, about the flat, reptilian coldness he had glimpsed in his wife's eyes when she didn't know he was watching. "I think," he said slowly, "that Victoria is capable of things I can't even imagine, and I'm not going to give her the chance to prove it." Miguel nodded. "What's the plan? Tonight?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Victoria thinks I'm working the late shift, but I'm going to come home early, and I'm going to catch her in the act." "How do you know she'll—" "Because I'm going to give her a reason." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing Miguel the camera app. "I'm going to move the camera, put it somewhere she doesn't expect, and I'm going to leave Luna alone with her just long enough for Victoria to think she's safe." Miguel's eyes widened. "Marcus, I know what it is." Marcus's voice was steel. "I know I'm using my daughter as bait, and I know I'll hate myself for it for the rest of my life. But if I don't get undeniable evidence, video proof of what Victoria is, she'll walk. Her lawyers will tear apart the drawings as a child's fantasy. They'll explain away the bruises as accidents. They'll paint me as a jealous ex-husband making false accusations." He met Miguel's eyes. "I can't let that happen. I can't let her win." Miguel was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. "What time tonight?" 7 o'clock. I'll text you when it's time to move in." "And Luna," Marcus closed his eyes. "Shadow will protect her. He's been protecting her this whole time, better than I have." The guilt in his voice was raw and bleeding. Miguel reached out and gripped his partner's shoulder. "You're protecting her now, Marcus. That's what matters." "Is it?" Marcus opened his eyes. "Or am I just trying to make up for all the times I didn't?" Miguel had no answer for that. Some questions didn't have answers. That evening, Marcus kissed Victoria goodbye, with a smile that felt like glass in his mouth. "Long shift tonight," he said. "Don't wait up." "Be safe," Victoria replied, her voice honeyed. "Luna and I will have a nice quiet evening. Won't we, sweetheart?" Luna stood in the doorway. Shadow pressed against her leg. Her eyes met her father's. In them, Marcus saw fear, but also trust. "I love you, Princess," he said, kneeling to hug her. "Remember what I told you. Everything's going to be okay." He slipped something into her pocket as he held her. A small device. A panic button connected to his phone. "If anything happens," he had told her earlier, showing her how it worked, "you push this, and I'll come. I promise you I will come." Luna nodded against his chest. Then she let him go. Marcus walked to his car, got in, and drove away. He made it exactly 2 blocks before pulling over, parking in the shadow of an ancient oak and settling in to wait. On his phone, the camera feed was live. The new angle covered the entire kitchen, including the corner where Victoria liked to dispense her discipline. Now all he had to do was wait, and pray that he hadn't just made the biggest mistake of his life. Inside the house, the sound of the patrol car's engine faded into silence. Victoria stood at the window watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. Then her smile dropped away, and the monster stepped out from behind the mask. Victoria turned from the window, and the transformation was instant. The softness melted from her features like wax from a candle. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. The warmth in her eyes, that carefully crafted illusion of maternal love, flickered out, leaving something cold and calculating in its place. She looked at Luna. Luna pressed herself against the wall, Shadow rising to his feet beside her. "Well?" Victoria said, her voice stripped of its honeyed sweetness. "Alone, at last." She walked to the kitchen counter and picked up her phone, scrolling through messages with casual indifference. "Your father thinks he's so clever," she murmured, almost to herself. "Working the late shift, leaving me to deal with you, as if I don't have better things to do with my evening." Luna didn't move, didn't breathe. The panic button in her pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. Not yet, she told herself. Not yet. She had to wait, had to be sure, had to give her father what he needed. Victoria set down her phone and opened the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of wine. She poured herself a generous glass, took a long sip, and sighed with satisfaction. "You know what I realized today?" She turned to face Luna, swirling the wine in her glass. "I've been too patient with you. Too gentle. I kept thinking you'd eventually come around. Start talking. Start behaving like a normal child instead of a broken little ghost." She took another sip. "But you're not going to, are you? You're just going to keep staring at me with those pathetic eyes. Keep hiding behind that stupid dog. Keep being a burden on your father and a stain on my reputation." Shadow growled, low and threatening. Victoria's eyes snapped to the dog. "Shut up," she hissed. "One more sound out of you and I'll tell Marcus you bit me. He'll have to put you down. Is that what you want?" Shadow's growl faded, but his body remained tense, coiled, ready. Victoria smiled, satisfied with her dominance. "That's better." She turned back to Luna. "Now, we're going to have a productive evening. You're going to clean the bathroom, the grout, the toilet, the floor, every inch. And you're going to do it right this time or there will be consequences." And she reached into this cabinet and pulled out a toothbrush and a bottle of bleach. "Get started." Luna took the supplies with trembling hands. She walked toward the bathroom, Shadow following close behind. "No," Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. "The dog stays here. I don't want him tracking dirt all over my clean floors." Luna froze. She looked at Shadow. Shadow looked at her. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent communication, a shared understanding. "Stay safe," his eyes said. "I'll be listening." "I know," hers answered. "I know." Luna walked to the bathroom alone. Shadow sat down in the kitchen doorway, his amber eyes fixed on Victoria. Watching. Waiting. 2 blocks away, Marcus stared at his phone screen, his heart hammering. He had watched Victoria's transformation with a mixture of horror and grim satisfaction. Horror at seeing the monster revealed so completely. Satisfaction at knowing it was all being recorded. "Come on," he whispered. "Give me something. Give me proof." His finger hovered over the text to Miguel. Not yet. He needed more. He needed undeniable evidence of physical abuse, something no lawyer could explain away, something that would put Victoria behind bars for decades. He needed to wait. Even though every cell in his body screamed at him to storm into that house and tear Victoria apart with his bare hands. He needed to wait. For Luna's sake. Inside the bathroom, Luna knelt on the cold tile floor and began to scrub. Her movements were mechanical. Practiced. She had done this so many times that her body knew the routine without her mind's involvement. Dip the brush, apply bleach, scrub in circles, move to the next section. Dip, apply, scrub, move. Her knees ached. Her hands burned from the chemicals. Her eyes watered from the fumes, but she didn't stop. Stopping meant attention. Attention meant pain. 30 minutes passed. Victoria appeared in the doorway, wine glass in hand, checking on Luna's progress. "Pathetic," she said, nudging Luna's work with her toe. "Look at this. You call this clean? My grandmother could do better, and she's been dead for 20 years. Luna scrubbed harder. "Faster," Victoria commanded. "I want this bathroom spotless in 15 minutes. If it's not, you're sleeping in the closet tonight. Without dinner. Without that disgusting stuffed rabbit you're always clutching." Luna's hands moved faster. Dip, apply, scrub, move, dip, apply, scrub, move. Victoria watched for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to the kitchen. Luna heard her pouring another glass of wine. The panic button pressed against her thigh. Not yet. Not yet. An hour passed. Luna finished the bathroom. Victoria inspected it, found 3 spots she deemed unacceptable, and made Luna redo the entire thing. Then she found 2 more spots. Then 1 more. By the time Victoria finally declared the bathroom barely adequate, Luna's knees were raw and bleeding through her pajama pants. Her hands were cracked and stinging. Her shoulders ached from hunching over the floor. "Get up," Victoria ordered. Luna struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. "Kitchen, now." Luna walked to the kitchen on legs that felt like rubber. Shadow was still there, still watching his body tense as a coiled spring. Victoria pointed at the stove. "I'm hungry. You're going to make me dinner." Luna stared at her. She was 5 years old. She couldn't cook. "Did you hear me?" Victoria's voice sharpened. "Pasta. Simple enough even for you. Boil water, add noodles, drain. A trained monkey could do it." Luna walked to the stove. Her hands were shaking. She reached for the pot on the back burner, a large stainless steel stock pot that Victoria used for soups. "Fill it with water," Victoria instructed, settling onto her stool at the island. "And try not to spill everywhere. I just had those floors cleaned." Luna carried the pot to the sink. It was heavy, too heavy for her small arms. She struggled to position it under the faucet, her muscles straining. "Hurry up," Victoria snapped. "I don't have all night." Luna turned on the water. The pot began to fill. It grew heavier and heavier. Her arms trembled. The pot slipped. Water sloshed over the sides, splashing onto the counter, dripping onto the floor. Luna's heart stopped. "What did I just say?" Victoria was on her feet in an instant, her face contorted with fury. "I just said not to spill. Are you deaf as well as mute? Are you completely worthless?" She crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides. Luna flinched backward, dropping the pot entirely. It crashed to the floor, water exploding across the tile in a spreading flood. For one terrible moment, silence. Then Victoria's hand connected with Luna's face. The slap echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. Luna's head snapped to the side. She stumbled, lost her footing on the wet floor, and went down hard. Shadow lunged forward with a thunderous bark, but Victoria spun on him. "Back!" she screamed. "Get back, or I swear to God I'll kill you both!" Shadow froze, torn between his training and his instinct. His eyes darted to Luna, sprawled on the wet floor, her cheek already reddening from the blow. Every muscle in his body screamed attack, but his training said, "Wait for command. Wait for Marcus." Marcus wasn't here. Shadow whined a high-pitched sound of agonized indecision. Victoria turned back to Luna. "Get up," she hissed. "Get up and clean this mess, now!" Luna struggled to rise, her hands slipping on the wet tile. Her cheek throbbed, her vision blurred with tears she was too terrified to let fall. She made it to her knees. Victoria grabbed her by the hair and yanked her upright. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused me?" Victoria's face was inches from Luna's, her breath hot and sour with wine. "I had plans. Beautiful plans. A new life with your father's money, and none of the baggage. But you—" She shook Luna by the hair, making the child cry out silently. "You just wouldn't cooperate." She released Luna with a shove. "Clean this up." Luna scrambled for a towel, pressing it against the spreading water. Victoria watched, breathing hard. Then something shifted in her expression. A cold calculation replaced the hot fury. "You know what?" she said softly. "I've changed my mind." Luna looked up, fear spiking through her veins. "I've been patient. I've been careful. I've been waiting for the right moment, but I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of looking at your pathetic face every day. I'm tired of pretending to love you when the sight of you makes me sick." She walked to the stove and turned on the burner. High heat. "Do you know what happens when water boils, Luna?" Luna's eyes widened. "It gets very, very hot. Hot enough to burn. Hot enough to scar." Victoria reached for the electric kettle on the counter. She filled it at the sink. She set it on the heating element. "Accidents happen all the time," she continued, her voice eerily calm. "Children are clumsy. They trip. They fall. They reach for things they shouldn't touch. It's tragic, really. But it happens." The kettle began to heat. Luna could hear the water beginning to simmer. "Your father will be heartbroken, of course, but he'll have me to comfort him, and the insurance money will help ease the pain. $750,000 buys a lot of comfort." The water was bubbling now. Steam rose from the spout. Victoria unplugged the kettle and lifted it, testing its weight. "I think we'll start with your face," she said, walking toward Luna. "A splash here, a splash there. Enough to disfigure, but not quite enough to kill. Although—" She tilted her head, considering. "Accidents can be so unpredictable." 2 blocks away, Marcus watched in frozen horror. The camera captured everything. Victoria holding the kettle. Steam rising. Luna cowering on the wet floor. His thumb found the text thread with Miguel. Now he typed. Now. He didn't wait for a response. He threw open the car door and ran. In the kitchen, Victoria stood over Luna, the kettle raised. "Any last words?" she laughed. "Oh, wait. You don't have any. How convenient." Luna's hand found her pocket, found the panic button. She pressed it. "What are you doing?" Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What's in your pocket?" She reached down and yanked Luna's hand out. The small device tumbled onto the wet floor. Victoria picked it up, examining it. "What is this?" Some kind of recognition dawned. Her face went white. "He knows." She looked at Luna. "He knows. That's why he stayed home. That's why he sent me to the spa. He's been watching." Her eyes darted around the kitchen, searching. They found the camera, the tiny black cube on top of the refrigerator, its green light blinking steadily. "No," Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. No. She stumbled backward, the kettle sloshing in her grip. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening. I was so careful. The sound of the front door crashing open. "Luna!" Marcus's voice raw with terror. Victoria's head snapped toward the hallway. In that split second of distraction, Shadow made his move. The dog had been waiting, watching, calculating. He had seen the kettle rise. He had seen the steam billow. He had seen Luna press the button, and Victoria's reaction. He had understood, in the way dogs understand, that his moment had finally come. He launched himself across the kitchen, 92 pounds of muscle and fury moving faster than human eyes could track. He didn't go for Victoria's throat, though every instinct screamed at him to kill the threat permanently. He went for the weapon. His jaws clamped onto Victoria's wrist, the wrist holding the kettle with crushing force. Victoria screamed. The kettle flew from her grip, tumbling through the air. It hit the counter edge, bounced, and crashed to the floor. The lid popped off. Boiling water exploded outward. Most of it splashed onto Victoria's legs, soaking through her pants, scalding the flesh beneath. Her screams reached a new pitch, inhuman, animalistic. But some of the water, a spray of droplets fine as mist, hot as fire, flew sideways. They hit Luna, her face, her neck, her hands. Luna's mouth opened in a silent scream. Her body arched in agony. She scrambled backward, away from the puddle, away from the steam, her eyes rolling back in her head. Marcus burst into the kitchen. He saw everything at once. Victoria on the floor, clutching her legs, howling. Shadow standing over her teeth, bared blood dripping from his muzzle. And Luna, his baby, his princess, curled in the corner, clutching her face, her small body shaking with silent sobs. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think. He ran to his daughter, sliding on the wet floor, throwing himself between her and Victoria. "Daddy's got you," he gasped, pulling Luna into his arms. "Daddy's got you, princess. I'm here. I'm here." Luna clung to him, her burned face pressed against his chest, her tears soaking through his shirt. "Shoot him!" Victoria screamed from the floor. "The dog attacked me! He's dangerous! Shoot him!" Marcus looked at Victoria. He looked at the kettle. He looked at the camera still recording its green light blinking. He looked at his daughter's burned face. And something inside him turned to ice. He rose to his feet, Luna still in his arms. He unholstered his service weapon. Victoria's screaming stopped, her eyes fixed on the gun. "Silas." Her voice changed instantly, shifting to that sweet, honeyed tone she used when she wanted something. "Honey, please. This is all a misunderstanding. The dog startled me. I was just making tea. I would never—" "Shut up." The words were quiet. Cold. More terrifying than any shout. "You were going to burn her." Marcus's voice didn't waver. "You were going to pour boiling water on my daughter's face. I watched you. The camera watched you. And now you're going to pay for every single thing you've done to her." "Marcus, please." I said, "Shut up." The gun rose, pointing directly at Victoria's chest. Shadow adjusted his position, ready to attack again if needed. Victoria pressed herself against the cabinets, her burned legs forgotten pure terror in her eyes. "You're a cop," she whispered. "You can't shoot me. There are rules, laws." "You're right." Marcus's finger rested on the trigger. "There are laws. Laws against child abuse, laws against attempted murder, laws against insurance fraud." He smiled, and it was the most frightening thing Victoria had ever seen. "And I'm going to make sure you face every single one of them." He reached for his radio with his free hand. "Dispatch, this is Officer Marcus Cole. I need ambulance and backup at my residence immediately. I have 2 burn victims and a suspect in custody for attempted murder of a minor. The suspect is my wife." Static crackled. "Officer Cole, please confirm." "You heard me. My wife, Victoria Cole. She tried to kill my daughter. Send everyone, now." He lowered the radio. Victoria was crying now, real tears, ugly tears, the mascara running down her face. "Marcus, you have to understand. I never meant—" "You increased the insurance payout yesterday." Marcus's voice was dead. $750,000 for accidental death. You were planning this. You were going to murder my daughter for money. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out, because there were no words, no explanation, no lie clever enough to escape this. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Miguel burst through the back door weapon, drawn, his eyes scanning the room. "Marcus, are you—" He stopped, taking in the scene. Jesus Christ. "Get her out of here," Marcus said, jerking his head toward Victoria. "I don't trust myself to touch her." Miguel holstered his weapon and approached Victoria carefully. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempted murder, child abuse, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." He cuffed her hands behind her back, ignoring her whimpers of pain. "You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to you." Victoria looked at Marcus as Miguel hauled her to her feet. "You'll regret this," she hissed, the mask slipping one final time. "I'll tell them you set me up. I'll tell them you're the abuser. They'll believe me. They always believe me." Marcus looked at her, at the woman he had loved, at the monster he had welcomed into his home. "Maybe they would have," he said quietly, "before tonight. But now I have 23 drawings, weeks of camera footage, testimony from the insurance company, and most importantly," he looked down at Luna still trembling in his arms, "I have her, and her truth is going to destroy you." Victoria's face crumpled. The fight went out of her. Miguel dragged her toward the front door as the first ambulance pulled into the driveway. Marcus sank to his knees, clutching Luna against his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Princess. I should have seen. I should have known. I should have protected you." Luna's burned hand reached up. She touched her father's cheek, and for the first time in over a year she made a sound. Not a word, just a small, soft sigh. But to Marcus, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. Shadow padded over and lay down beside them, pressing his warm body against Luna's back. The three of them huddled together on the wet kitchen floor as paramedics rushed in, as radios crackled, as the chaos of justice finally arriving swirled around them. The nightmare wasn't over. There would be hospitals and doctors and social workers. There would be lawyers and trials and testimony. There would be months of healing, physical and emotional, before anything resembling normal could return. But the monster was gone. Dragged away in handcuffs, her burned legs leaving a trail of blistered skin on the hardwood. And Luna was safe. Finally safe. Marcus held his daughter and his dog and let the tears fall. He had almost lost her. He had almost lost everything. But Shadow had saved them. Shadow, who had watched and waited and chosen his moment with perfect precision. Shadow, who had done what Marcus should have done months ago. Shadow, who had proven that loyalty wasn't just a word. It was a choice, a commitment, a promise written in blood and kept against impossible odds. "Good boy," Marcus whispered, reaching out to stroke the dog's head. "Good boy, Shadow. You saved her. You saved us." Shadow's tail wagged once. His amber eyes met Marcus's, and in them Marcus saw something that looked very much like love. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Marcus sat in a plastic chair beside Luna's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest as she slept. Her face was wrapped in white gauze patches of burn gel, visible beneath the bandages. Her left hand was similarly wrapped, protecting the scalded skin. She looked so small in the hospital bed, so fragile, so broken. The doctor had said the burns were second-degree painful, but not permanently disfiguring. With proper care, the scars would fade to thin white lines within a year or two. But Marcus knew the real scars weren't on Luna's skin. They were somewhere deeper, somewhere that bandages couldn't reach. A soft knock on the door made him look up. Detective Miguel Santos entered, his face grave. "How is she?" "Sleeping." Marcus's voice was hoarse. "They gave her something for the pain. She'll be out for a few more hours." Miguel nodded, pulling up a chair beside his partner. "I just came from the station. Victoria's in custody. She's already lawyered up some fancy defense attorney from Atlanta. He's claiming self-defense against the dog." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Self-defense. She was holding a kettle of boiling water over a 5-year-old's head." "I know." Miguel leaned forward. "But here's the thing, Marcus. Without audio on that footage, her lawyer's going to argue the video is ambiguous. He'll say she was moving the kettle away from Luna, not toward her. He'll say Shadow attacked unprovoked." "That's insane." "That's the legal system." Miguel's voice was tired. "We've got the drawings, the insurance records, the medical evidence of long-term abuse. But Victoria's playing the victim card hard. She's telling anyone who'll listen that you set her up, that you've been abusing Luna and framing her." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "No one believes that." "Some people might. She's convincing Marcus. You know that better than anyone." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. Victoria had convinced Marcus, after all. For months and months, she had convinced him that everything was fine, that Luna was just adjusting, that the bruises were accidents, that the silence was grief. If she could fool a trained cop, she could fool a jury. "What do we do?" Marcus asked. "We need Luna to testify." Marcus's head snapped up. "Absolutely not. She can't speak. She hasn't said a word in over a year. You can't put her on a witness stand, and I know." Miguel held up his hands. "I know, but there's a way. The prosecutor's office is bringing in a child psychologist, a specialist in trauma cases. She thinks Luna can testify through other means. Drawings, gestures, maybe even assisted communication devices. You want to make my daughter relive the worst moments of her life in front of a courtroom full of strangers. I want to make sure Victoria Hayes never hurts another child again." Miguel's voice hardened. "And so do you. This is bigger than just Luna now, Marcus. I did some digging. Victoria was married before, 7 years ago, to a man named Thomas Reed in Atlanta." Marcus frowned. "She never mentioned that." "I'm not surprised. Thomas Reed died 6 months after the wedding. House fire. Ruled accidental. Victoria collected $300,000 in life insurance." The blood drained from Marcus's face. "You think I think there's a pattern." Miguel pulled out his phone, showing Marcus a photo. Thomas had a daughter from a previous marriage, 8 years old at the time of his death. Her name was Sophie. The photo showed a little girl with dark curly hair and big brown eyes. She looked almost exactly like Luna. "Where is she now?" Marcus asked. "Foster care. The mother's family tried to get custody, but there was some dispute about the estate. By the time it was settled, Sophie had been in the system for years. I tracked her down this morning." And Miguel's expression darkened. "She has scars, Marcus. Burn scars on her arms and back. She told her foster parents they were from the house fire, but the pattern doesn't match smoke or flame damage." Marcus felt sick. "It matches scalding water." "Exactly." Miguel leaned back. "Sophie's 18 now. She's agreed to testify. Says she's been waiting years for someone to finally believe her about Victoria. Why didn't she come forward before?" "She tried. Back when Thomas died, she told investigators that Victoria was hurting her, that the fire wasn't an accident. But Victoria had already laid the groundwork. Told everyone Sophie was a troubled child with behavioral problems, that she had attachment issues, that she told lies for attention." Sound familiar? Marcus thought of Victoria calling Luna accident-prone, telling the school she had an active imagination, building a wall of reasonable doubt around every bruise, every injury, every silent scream for help. "She's done this before," Marcus whispered. "She's a predator. She finds vulnerable families and destroys them." Miguel finished. "But not this time. This time we stop her, for good." Marcus looked at Luna, still sleeping peacefully. "What do I have to do?" "Convince Luna to testify. Work with the psychologist. Help her find a way to tell her story even without words. Miguel stood up. The trial is in 6 weeks. That's not much time. But if Luna can show the jury what Victoria did even without speaking, we can put that monster away for the rest of her life. 6 weeks. 42 days to prepare his traumatized daughter for the most important performance of her life. Marcus reached out and took Luna's bandaged hand. I'll do whatever it takes. The next morning, Dr. Alicia Reyes arrived at the hospital. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, carrying a leather messenger bag full of art supplies and communication cards. She specialized in working with non-verbal children, particularly those who had experienced severe trauma. Mr. Cole, she said, shaking Marcus's hand, I've reviewed Luna's file. I want you to know that I don't make promises I can't keep. But I've seen children far more damaged than Luna find their voices again. Not always with words, but with other forms of expression that are just as powerful. What do you need from me? Time, patience, and trust. Dr. Reyes set her bag on the table. Luna has been living in survival mode for over a year. Her silence isn't a choice, it's a defense mechanism. Her brain learned that speaking up led to punishment, so it shut down the speech centers entirely. Can you fix it? I can help her rebuild trust in communication, show her that it's safe to express herself again. But it won't be fast, and it won't be linear. There will be good days and bad days, progress and setbacks. Marcus nodded. Whatever it takes, just help her. Dr. Reyes smiled softly. That's exactly what I intend to do. The first session was simple. Dr. Reyes sat on the floor with Luna surrounded by crayons and paper. She didn't ask questions, didn't push, just drew her own pictures, a house, a tree, a sun, and left space for Luna to join if she wanted. For 30 minutes, Luna watched. Motionless. Silent. Then slowly her bandaged hand reached for a crayon. She picked up the black one. She started to draw. Dr. Reyes said nothing. She just kept drawing her own pictures, her body language relaxed and non-threatening. Luna drew for 20 minutes straight. When she finally stopped, she had created a single image. A large figure, holding something over a smaller figure. Drops falling like rain. And in the corner, a dog, with its mouth open in a silent howl. Dr. Reyes looked at the drawing for a long moment. Thank you for showing me Luna, she said quietly. That took a lot of courage. Luna's eyes welled with tears. Dr. Reyes didn't reach for her, didn't invade her space. She just sat there present and patient until Luna's tears dried on their own. Same time tomorrow, Dr. Reyes asked. Luna nodded. One small nod. But to Marcus, watching from the doorway, it was a miracle. The sessions continued. Every day, Dr. Reyes came. Every day, Luna drew. The drawings evolved, becoming more detailed, more complex, more horrifying in their specificity. Victoria forcing Luna to scrub floors until her knees bled. Victoria locking Luna in dark closets for hours at a time. Victoria holding Luna's arm over a flame on the stove, a punishment Luna had never told anyone about. Victoria whispering threats while Marcus slept in the next room. Each drawing was a piece of testimony. Each image was evidence. And each session, Luna grew a little stronger. Dr. Reyes introduced communication cards, simple pictures that Luna could point to when she wanted to express something. Happy, sad, scared, hungry, tired, angry. Luna used the angry card more than any other. Good, Dr. Reyes told Marcus. Anger is healthy. It means she's moving from victim to survivor. She's processing the injustice of what happened to her, not just the trauma. By the third week, Luna was using a communication tablet pointing at words and phrases to build simple sentences. She hurt me. I was scared. Shadow protected me. Daddy didn't know. That last sentence broke Marcus's heart. He had failed her. For months and months he had failed her. And still she was protecting him. Still she was making sure he wasn't blamed. Luna, he said, kneeling beside her bed. You don't have to protect me. What happened wasn't your fault, but it wasn't not my fault either. I should have seen. I should have known. Luna looked at him with those huge brown eyes. Her bandaged hand reached for the tablet. You see now? I do, Marcus choked out. I see now. That's enough. He pulled her into his arms and held her tight. Maybe it was enough. Maybe after everything it had to be. The trial date approached like a gathering storm. Victoria's lawyer, a slick man named Bradley Crawford, filed motion after motion trying to get the case dismissed. He challenged the camera footage as illegally obtained. He challenged Luna's competency to testify. He challenged the relevance of Thomas Reed's death, arguing it was prejudicial. The judge denied every motion. The evidence was overwhelming. But Victoria wasn't going down without a fight. 3 days before the trial, Marcus received a visitor. A woman in her late 20s with dark hair and haunted eyes. Sophie Reed. Mr. Cole. She stood on his doorstep, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. Detective Santos told me where you lived. I needed to see you, to see Luna. Marcus stepped aside. Come in. Sophie sat on the couch, her hands trembling. I've been trying to come forward for 12 years, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Since I was 8 years old. Since the night my father died. She took a shaky breath. Victoria set the fire. I know she did. I watched her pour gasoline in the basement and light a match. She told me if I ever said anything, she'd kill me too. Make it look like an accident, just like my dad. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw the news. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I saw Luna's picture. She looks just like me at that age. Same hair, same eyes, same expression, like she's already dead inside and just waiting for her body to catch up. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Victoria has a type, Mr. Cole. Widowers with young daughters. Men who are grieving and vulnerable and desperate for someone to fill the hole in their lives. She finds them, she seduces them, and then she destroys them. One family at a time. How many? Sophie shook her head. I don't know. But after my father died, Victoria inherited everything. The house, the savings, the life insurance. It was enough to start over somewhere else, to find a new victim. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Because she's good at what she does. Sophie's voice hardened. She's charming and beautiful, and everyone believes her. Everyone always believes her. Except the children. We see the truth, but nobody listens to children. She looked toward the hallway where Luna's bedroom door was visible. Is she okay, Luna? She's getting better. Marcus's voice was hoarse. Every day a little better. Can I see her? Marcus hesitated. Why? Because I want her to know she's not alone. Sophie's tears spilled over. I want her to know that someone else survived, someone else escaped. I want her to know that Victoria doesn't win. Not this time. Not anymore. Marcus thought about it for a long moment. Then he stood up. Wait here. He walked to Luna's room and knocked softly. Princess, there's someone here to see you. Someone who understands what you've been through. Luna looked up from her drawing. Her eyes were cautious, but curious. Marcus held out his hand. "Will you come meet her?" Luna hesitated. Then she put down her crayon. She took her father's hand. And she let him lead her to the living room. Sophie dropped to her knees the moment Luna appeared. "Hi, Luna," she said softly. "My name is Sophie. I know we've never met before, but I feel like I know you, because we have something in common." Luna stared at her. Sophie slowly rolled up her sleeve. On her forearm, a pattern of scars, white and raised and unmistakable. Burn scars, from scalding water. "She did this to me too," Sophie whispered. "A long time ago, when I was about your age, and for years I thought I was alone. I thought nobody would ever believe me. I thought I was broken forever." Luna's eyes widened. She looked at the scars. Then she looked at her own bandaged hand. "But I wasn't broken," Sophie continued. "I was hurt. I was scared, but I survived, just like you survived. And now we're going to make sure she never hurts anyone else again. You and me, together." Luna's lip trembled. She looked at Sophie, at her father, at Shadow lying in the doorway watching. Then she did something she hadn't done with anyone except Marcus in over a year. She stepped forward, and she hugged Sophie. Sophie wrapped her arms around the little girl, tears streaming down her face. "I know, sweetheart," she whispered. "I know." They stayed like that for a long time. Two survivors. Two victims. Two people who had looked into the face of evil and lived to tell the tale. Marcus watched them, his heart breaking and healing all at once. The trial wasn't just about Luna anymore. It was about Sophie. It was about every victim Victoria had ever targeted. It was about stopping a monster before she could claim another family. And Marcus would make sure they won, whatever it took. The night before the trial, Marcus sat on the edge of Luna's bed, holding her hand. "Tomorrow's going to be hard," he said quietly. "There's going to be a lot of people in that courtroom. Lawyers and judges and strangers, and Victoria will be there too." Luna's hand tightened on his. "But you won't be alone," Marcus squeezed back. "I'll be right there. Shadow will be right there. Dr. Reyes, Sophie, Miguel, everyone who loves you, everyone who believes you, will all be there." Luna looked at him with those huge brown eyes. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to," Marcus said. "If it's too hard, if you're too scared, we can find another way. I won't force you." Luna was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached for her communication tablet. She typed 3 words. "I want to." "Are you sure?" Luna nodded. Then she typed again. "For Sophie." Marcus's throat closed up. "For Sophie," he repeated. "For Dad. For Dad." Luna paused. Then typed one more time. "For me." Marcus pulled her into his arms. "That's my brave girl," he whispered. "That's my brave, brave girl." Outside the window, the moon rose over Charleston. Tomorrow, the battle would begin. And Luna, 5 years old, traumatized, voiceless, would be their greatest weapon. Not because she could speak, but because the truth didn't need words. It just needed someone brave enough to show it. And Luna was the bravest person Marcus had ever known. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras prohibited, but notebooks ready. The jury, 12 strangers who would decide Victoria's fate, sat in their box, with expressions ranging from curious to grim. Marcus sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, his hands clasped so tight His knuckles had turned white. Beside him, Sophie Reed clutched a tissue, her face pale but determined. And in a small room adjacent to the courtroom, Luna waited with Dr. Reyes and Shadow. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Morrison with silver hair and steel-gray eyes, called the proceedings to order. "The state of South Carolina versus Victoria Hayes Cole," she announced. "The defendant is charged with attempted murder in the first-degree aggravated child abuse insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. How does the defendant plead?" Victoria stood at the defense table flanked by Bradley Crawford and 2 junior attorneys. She wore a cream-colored blouse and modest jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like a Sunday school teacher. She looked innocent. "Not guilty, Your Honor," Crawford answered smoothly. "On all counts." Judge Morrison nodded. "The prosecution may make its opening statement." Assistant District Attorney Carmen Vega rose from her chair. She was a formidable woman, 45 years old, with sharp features and sharper instincts. She had built her career on putting predators behind bars, and she had never lost a child abuse case. She wasn't planning to start now. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Carmen began, her voice clear and confident, "what you are about to see over the next several days will disturb you. It will anger you. It may even make you question your faith in humanity." She pointed at Victoria. "That woman, Victoria Hayes Cole, is not what she appears to be. She presents herself as a loving wife, a devoted stepmother, a pillar of the community. But behind closed doors, she is something else entirely. A predator, a manipulator, a monster who preys on vulnerable children for financial gain." Crawford stood. "Objection, Your Honor. Inflammatory language." "Overruled." Judge Morrison's voice was flat. "Continue, Ms. Vega." Carmen nodded. "Over the course of this trial, we will present evidence showing that Victoria Hayes Cole systematically abused her 5-year-old stepdaughter, Luna Cole, for more than 14 months. We will show that she increased Luna's life insurance policy to $750,000 just days before attempting to pour boiling water on the child's face. And we will show that this is not the first time Victoria has targeted a vulnerable family." She paused, letting the words sink in. 12 years ago, Victoria was married to a man named Thomas Reed in Atlanta. Thomas had an 8-year-old daughter named Sophie. 6 months after the wedding, Thomas died in a house fire, a fire that Sophie Reed will testify was deliberately set by Victoria. Sophie herself bears burn scars from Victoria's abuse scars she has carried for over a decade. Crawford stood again. "Objection. The Thomas Reed case is not relevant to—" "It establishes pattern and motive, Your Honor," Carmen interrupted. "The prosecution has a right to demonstrate that the defendant has engaged in similar conduct before." Judge Morrison considered. "I'll allow it, but keep it focused, Ms. Vega." "Thank you, Your Honor." Carmen turned back to the jury. "By the end of this trial, you will have no doubt that Victoria Hayes Cole is guilty, not just of attempted murder, but of a calculated, cold-blooded scheme to destroy families for profit. The only question is whether you have the courage to stop her." She sat down. Crawford rose for the defense. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice warm and reasonable, "my client is a victim here. A victim of a vicious dog attack. A victim of a husband who planted surveillance cameras in their home without her knowledge. A victim of a disturbed child who tragically suffers from mental illness that causes her to fabricate stories." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The prosecution wants you to believe that Victoria is a monster. But the evidence will show something very different. It will show a woman who tried her best to care for a troubled stepdaughter. A woman who was attacked by a dangerous animal and suffered severe burns as a result. A woman whose only crime was loving a man whose child needed more help than she could provide. He spread his hands. Victoria Hayes Cole is not a murderer. She is a scapegoat, and I trust that you will see through the prosecution's theatrical tactics and deliver a verdict based on facts, not fear. He sat down. Judge Morrison checked her notes. The prosecution may call its first witness. Carmen stood. The state calls Officer Marcus Cole. Marcus walked to the witness stand, his legs feeling like they were filled with concrete. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. Carmen approached. Officer Cole, please describe your relationship with the defendant. She was my wife. The words tasted bitter. We were married 18 months ago. And how did you meet? At a grief support group. My first wife, Emily, died in a car accident 3 years ago. Victoria was there. She said she had lost her husband to cancer. Did you later learn that was a lie? Crawford stood. Objection. Leading. Sustained. Carmen rephrased. Officer Cole, what did you learn about Victoria's previous marriage? That her first husband, Thomas Reed, died in a house fire, not cancer, and that his death was ruled suspicious by investigators, though no charges were ever filed. How did that make you feel? Marcus looked at Victoria. She stared back with those sea-glass eyes, her expression a perfect mask of injured innocence. Like I had invited a predator into my home, Marcus said quietly. Like I had handed my daughter to a wolf and called it love. The prosecution continued for 2 hours. Marcus described the pet camera, the footage, the drawings, the insurance call, the night he came home to find Victoria holding a kettle over Luna's head. He described Shadow's attack, how the dog had saved Luna's life by targeting Victoria's weapon, not her body. He described the aftermath, the hospital, the revelations of long-term abuse, the spiral fracture that had never been set. By the time Carmen finished her questioning, several jurors were wiping their eyes. Crawford's cross-examination was brutal. Officer Cole, isn't it true that you installed that camera without your wife's knowledge or consent? Yes. Isn't it true that you suspected your wife of wrongdoing for weeks before taking any action? I was gathering evidence. Or were you setting a trap? Crawford's voice sharpened. Isn't it possible that you orchestrated this entire scenario to frame your wife for a crime she didn't commit? Absolutely not. You're a trained police officer. You know how to manipulate evidence. You know how to build a case against someone. Isn't it possible? I watched my wife try to pour boiling water on my 5-year-old daughter's face. Marcus's voice cracked with fury. I watched her terrorize my child for over a year while I was too blind to see it. There is no manipulation here, only the truth. Crawford smiled thinly. No further questions. The second day brought Sophie Reed to the stand. She walked to the witness box with her chin held high, but Marcus could see her hands trembling at her sides. She was terrified, but she was brave. So incredibly brave. Ms. Reed, Carmen began gently. Please tell the jury about your relationship with Victoria Hayes. Sophie took a breath. She married my father when I was 7 years old. At first she was wonderful, kind, affectionate, everything a little girl could want in a stepmother. When did that change? About 3 months after the wedding. Sophie's voice wavered. My father started working longer hours, business trips, and when he was gone, Victoria became someone else. Can you describe what she did? Sophie rolled up her sleeve, exposing the burn scars Marcus had seen at his house. She held my arm over the stove burner because I spilled my juice at breakfast. She locked me in the basement overnight because I got a B on a spelling test. She told me if I ever said anything to my father, she would kill him and make it look like an accident. Her voice broke, and then she did. The courtroom was silent. Ms. Reed, can you describe the night of the fire? I woke up because I smelled smoke. I ran to my parents' bedroom, but the door was locked. I could hear my father banging on it, screaming for help, and I saw Victoria standing at the end of the hallway watching. Sophie's tears fell freely now. She looked at me, right at me, and she smiled. Then she turned and walked down the stairs, and I never saw my father alive again. What happened to you after the fire? I told the investigators what I saw, but Victoria had already told everyone I was a troubled child, that I had behavioral problems, that I made up stories for attention. No one believed me. Sophie looked at the jury. I was 8 years old. I watched my father die, and no one believed me. Crawford's cross-examination tried to paint Sophie as unstable, citing her history of therapy, her time in foster care, her struggles with depression. But Sophie held firm. I've been waiting 12 years for someone to believe me, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. 12 years of nightmares. 12 years of wondering if I could have saved him. 12 years of watching Victoria walk free while my father rotted in his grave. She looked at Victoria. I'm not lying. I've never been lying. And today, finally, someone is listening. The third day was Luna's turn. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the prosecution announced their final witness. Crawford had filed multiple motions to exclude Luna's testimony, arguing that a non-verbal child couldn't be cross-examined properly. Judge Morrison had denied them all. The witness will be accompanied by a certified therapy dog and a licensed child psychologist, she ruled. The court will make accommodations for her communication needs. The door to the side room opened. Luna walked in holding Dr. Reyes's hand. Shadow walked beside her, his leash held loosely in Luna's other hand. The courtroom went silent. Luna was wearing a simple blue dress. Her burn scars were visible on her cheek and neck, faded now to pink and white, but still unmistakable. Her hair was pulled back with a ribbon Emily had given her years ago. She looked at the jury. She looked at the judge. She looked at Victoria. And Victoria, for the first time since the trial began, flinched. Luna climbed into the witness chair, which had been modified with a booster seat. Shadow sat directly beside her, his warm body pressed against her leg. Carmen approached slowly, her voice gentle. Hello, Luna. My name is Carmen. I'm going to ask you some questions today, okay? You can answer using your tablet, or by pointing, or by showing us with your hands. Whatever feels comfortable. Luna nodded. Luna, do you know who that woman is? Carmen pointed at Victoria. Luna looked. Her hand moved to the tablet on her lap. She typed. Victoria. And who is Victoria to you, Daddy's wife? Did Victoria ever hurt you, Luna? Luna's fingers hovered over the tablet. The courtroom held its breath. Yes. Can you show us how? Luna set down the tablet. She stood up in the witness chair. Shadow rose with her pressing closer. Luna raised her hands above her head, miming holding something heavy. She tilted her hands as if pouring. Then she touched her face, her neck, her hands tracing the path of the burns. Her expression contorted in silent agony. She dropped to her knees, curling into a ball, just as she had that night in the kitchen. Several jurors gasped. One woman started crying. Luna stayed curled up for a long moment. Then Shadow nuzzled her cheek, and she slowly uncurled, climbing back onto the chair. Luna, Carmen said softly. Is that woman Victoria? The person who did that to you? Luna picked up the tablet. Yes. Did she hurt you other times too, before that night? Luna's fingers flew across the screen. Many times. She hurt me when Daddy was at work. She called me worthless. She locked me in the dark. She made me scrub until I bled. Why didn't you tell your father? Luna paused, then typed. She said she would kill Shadow. She said Daddy would hate me if I told. Do you believe that now? Luna looked at Marcus in the gallery. Their eyes met. And for the first time in the entire trial, Luna smiled a small, trembling smile. No. One more question, Luna. Carmen's voice was barely above a whisper. Who saved you that night? Luna didn't need the tablet for this. She wrapped her arms around Shadow's neck, and she pointed at her father. Crawford's cross-examination was brief. He tried to suggest Luna had been coached, that her memories were false, that she was too young to understand what she had seen. But every time he pushed, Luna pushed back typing responses on her tablet that were clear, consistent, and devastating. She hurt me. I remember. I'm not lying. Finally, Crawford gave up. No further questions. Luna stepped down from the witness stand. She walked past the defense table, Shadow at her side. And as she passed Victoria, she stopped. The courtroom froze. Luna looked up at her stepmother, the woman who had tortured her, terrorized her, tried to destroy her. Victoria looked back. And for one moment, the mask slipped. The cold, reptilian hatred flickered in Victoria's eyes just for a second, just long enough. The jury saw it. Everyone saw it. Luna turned and walked to her father, climbing into his arms. And Victoria Hayes Cole knew in that moment that she had lost. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they filed back into the courtroom, their faces were stone. Judge Morrison looked at the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have your honor. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find guilty? Victoria didn't react. On the count of aggravated child abuse, how do you find guilty? On the count of insurance fraud, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Victoria's lawyer slumped. Judge Morrison turned to the defendant. Victoria Hayes Cole, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will take place in 30 days. Until then, you are remanded to custody without bail. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. The bailiffs moved in. Victoria stood, her hands automatically moving behind her back for the cuffs. As they clicked into place, she looked at Marcus. Her eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll appeal. I'll get out. And when I do, when you do, Marcus cut her off, his voice ice. Luna will be grown. She'll be strong. And she'll spend every day of her life knowing that she beat you. That a 5-year-old little girl who couldn't even speak brought down the monster everyone else was too afraid to see. He leaned closer. You lose, Victoria. You lose everything. They dragged her away. The sentencing came 30 days later. Judge Morrison looked down at Victoria with an expression of profound disgust. Victoria Hayes Cole, your crimes represent a betrayal of the most sacred trust, the trust between a child and the adults sworn to protect her. You used charm and manipulation to infiltrate vulnerable families. You tortured children for profit. And you showed no remorse even when confronted with overwhelming evidence of your depravity. She straightened her papers. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, I sentence you to 25 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. On the count of aggravated child abuse, I sentence you to 15 years to be served consecutively, On the count of insurance fraud, I sentence you to 10 years to be served consecutively. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, I sentence you to 20 years to be served consecutively." She looked up. "That is a total of 70 years. You will not be eligible for parole for the first 50. Victoria's face went white. "You will die in prison, Ms. Cole. And frankly, that is more mercy than you deserve." The gavel fell. 6 months later, the seasons had changed. Charleston had settled into a glorious autumn golden light crisp air, the kind of weather that made you believe in second chances. Marcus sat on a bench in Waterfront Park, watching Luna play with Shadow near the fountain. She was chasing the dog in circles, laughing, as Shadow pretended to let her catch him before bounding away at the last second. She had grown in the past 6 months. Not just physically, though she had finally gaining the weight she'd lost during Victoria's abuse, but emotionally. The hollow look had faded from her eyes. The hunched shoulders had straightened. The constant trembling had stopped. She was still in therapy. Probably would be for years. But she was healing. And 2 months ago she had spoken her first word. Dr. Reyes had cried. Marcus had cried harder. The word was Shadow. Of course it was. Since then, more words had followed. Slowly at first, then faster. Her vocabulary was still limited, her sentences sometimes jumbled. But every word was a victory. Every sentence was a miracle. Luna ran up to the bench, breathless and grinning. "Daddy Shadow fast. He sure is princess." Marcus smiled, pulling her onto his lap. "Are you tired?" Luna shook her head vigorously. "More play." 5 more minutes. Then we need to head home. Sophie's coming for dinner, remember?" Luna's face lit up. Sophie had become a regular presence in their lives. She visited every few weeks, staying in the guest room, helping Luna understand that she wasn't alone, that other people had survived Victoria, that healing was possible. They had become something like sisters, the 2 girls Victoria had tried to destroy, now bound together by survival and strength. "Sophie bring cookies?" "I think so." "Yay!" Luna wriggled off his lap and ran back to Shadow, who was waiting patiently by the fountain. Marcus watched them play, his heart full to bursting. He had almost lost her. He had almost lost everything. But Shadow had saved them. That magnificent, loyal, brave dog had done what Marcus couldn't see. The truth waited for the right moment and struck when it mattered most. Luna threw a tennis ball. Shadow caught it mid-air, his powerful jaws snapping shut with a satisfying pop. He trotted back to Luna, dropping the ball at her feet. His tail wagged. His amber eyes shone. And Luna, his brave, beautiful, unbreakable. Luna laughed and threw the ball again. The sun was setting over Charleston, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and amber. The water of the harbor sparkled. The palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze. And somewhere in a prison cell 700 miles away, Victoria Hayes Cole sat alone facing 50 years of concrete walls and iron bars. Justice had been served. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to give Luna her voice back. Enough to give Sophie her closure. Enough to give Marcus his second chance. Luna ran back to the bench one final time. She climbed up next to her father. Shadow followed, settling at their feet with a contented sigh. The 3 of them sat together watching the sunset, the father, the daughter, and the dog, who had saved them both. Luna leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder. Daddy, yes, princess, I love you. 3 words. Simple words. But to Marcus, they were everything. I love you too, Luna. He kissed the top of her head. More than anything in this world. Shadow's tail thumped against the ground. Luna giggled. Shadow say he love us too. I know he does, sweetheart. I know. They sat there until the stars came out, 3 survivors, 3 fighters, 3 hearts beating as one. The story of Marcus, Luna, and Shadow reminds us that the most dangerous lies are often hidden behind the prettiest smiles, and the loudest cries for help are sometimes completely silent. It teaches us to trust our instincts to protect the vulnerable, and to never underestimate the courage of a child or the loyalty of a dog. True love is not just about providing a roof over someone's head. It is about being a safe haven where they can breathe without fear. And sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who never say a word, they just act when it matters most. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who has survived. Share it with someone who is still fighting. And remember, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. For Luna, for Sophie, for every child who has suffered in silence, the dawn has finally arrived. And it is beautiful.